Ishamael, now free after being unintentionally released by Rand and Moiraine, gathers with other high-ranking dark friends to discuss their next move. Instead of hunting Rand down, they decide to observe him, intrigued by his potential and what he might become. Moiraine, still struggling with her disconnection from the One Power, refuses to remain idle and continues her search for answers. She acquires a disturbing poem written in blood from one of her informants, hinting at dark events ahead. The informant also warns her that Fades are actively pursuing her. Despite their bond being severed at the White Tower, Lon chooses to remain by her side, fulfilling his duty as her warder. At the White Tower, Egwene and Nynaeve officially begin their novice training, spending months performing chores while also learning the fundamentals of channeling. Egwene eagerly embraces the challenge, but Nynaeve struggles with controlling her power. Seeing her raw potential, Lindren of the Red Aja offers to tutor her personally, though other Aes Sedai are wary of Lindren's harsh methods, as she has harmed novices in the past. Meanwhile, deep within the secret dungeons of the White Tower, Mat remains imprisoned at Moiraine's request, left alone with his own thoughts. Perrin and Loyal have joined a group of Sheenaran trackers led by Lord Inkter, setting off in search of the legendary Horn of Valir. The artifact, according to legend, can summon the greatest warriors of all time and could be a crucial weapon against the Dark One. During their travels, Perrin begins to feel something awaken within him, a strange power that Elias, one of the trackers, seems to recognize and understand. In the slums of Foregate, just outside Carrion, Rand has gone into hiding, attempting to carve out a quiet life for himself. As the people celebrate Beltane, he lights a lantern in memory of those he has lost, trying to embrace the illusion of normalcy. Meanwhile, Moiraine's investigation brings her face to face with a group of Fades. She holds them off as best she can, but without her magic, she is quickly overpowered. Just as it seems she will be killed, Lon, Varen, and the rest of her allies arrive in time to save her, ensuring that her fight against the Dark One is far from over. Near Foregate, Rand now works as an orderly at an asylum while living with his girlfriend, Selene, an innkeeper. Though Rand genuinely cares for his patients, some of his fellow orderlies are far less kind. One night, after witnessing one of his co-workers abusing a patient, Rand takes matters into his own hands, violently beating the man and leaving him incapacitated in an alley. Following their harrowing fight with the Fades, Moiraine prepares to travel back to the White Tower despite her exile and land's concerns. As they journey, Varen deduces that Moiraine is secretly tracking down the Dragon Reborn. Instead of questioning her motives, Varen pledges her unwavering loyalty, vowing to stand by Moiraine's side no matter what. As Perrin and his company continue their search for the Horn of Valir, they come across a horrifying sight: a town that has been completely massacred, with a Fade gruesomely nailed to a wall. Needing rest, they take shelter in a nearby lakeside village for the night, unaware of the danger that lurks ahead. At the White Tower, Lindren continues to push Nynaeve to accept her as a personal mentor. However, in order to do so, Nynaeve must undergo a set of perilous trials known as the Arches, a rite that would elevate her from a novice to an accepted. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeons, Mat tirelessly chisels away at a stone wall, eventually uncovering a neighboring cell occupied by men, a seer with the ability to glimpse the future. The two quickly form a bond, though Min secretly keeps one of her latest visions to herself, a troubling image of Mat stabbing Rand. Elsewhere in the White Tower, Egwene meets and befriends Elaine Trakan, a fellow novice who is also the heir to the powerful kingdom of Andor. Meanwhile, Nynaeve secretly follows Lindren one night and is shocked to discover that the ruthless Aes Sedai secretly cares for a sickly son, a truth she keeps hidden from the others. Despite her distrust of Lindren, Nynaeve ultimately accepts her offer and is led to the beginning of the Arch's trial, a test that will determine whether she is ready to advance as an Aes Sedai. Meanwhile, Lon, suspicious of Moiraine's secrecy, steals the poem she acquired from her informant. However, Moiraine ultimately confesses the truth: she and Rand did not kill the Dark One at the Eye of the World as they had believed. Instead, they accidentally freed Ishamael, one of the Forsaken, unleashing a far greater danger upon the world. Fearing the war and chaos that will follow, Moiraine makes a painful decision. She officially releases Lon from his duty as her warder, ordering him to return to the White Tower. Feeling abandoned and unappreciated, Lon is left with no choice but to walk away. As Perrin and the trackers sleep, they are suddenly ambushed by invaders from the Shan Empire. Despite fighting back, they are swiftly overpowered and taken captive. When they awaken, they find themselves standing before Lady Seroth, the ruthless leader of the invading force, who was accompanied by none other than Ishamael himself. Back at the asylum, Rand is assigned new work orders and spends his shift tending the gardens. To his surprise, he encounters a prisoner hidden among the greenery Loghain Ablar, the false dragon, whose madness and power once threatened the Aes Sedai. As Nynaeve prepares to undergo the Arch's trial, she is warned about its mysterious and sometimes deadly nature. The test is designed to push initiates to their limits, and if she refuses to continue after entering, she will be permanently exiled from the White Tower. Despite the risks, Nynaeve accepts and begins the trials, each one more disturbing than the last. She is thrown into visions of childhood trauma, plague, death, and other horrors that test her willpower and emotions. After enduring the final test, Nynaeve emerges deeply shaken. Although she has technically passed, she refuses the promotion to accept it and decides to leave the White Tower altogether. Saying an emotional goodbye to Egwene, she sets off to return home to the Two Rivers. Along the way, she encounters Lon, who offers to accompany her. Accepting his offer, she kisses him, but something about the moment feels surreal. In reality, Nynaeve is still trapped within the arches, caught in an illusion created by the test. The Aes Sedai overseeing her trial deem it a failure, believing there is no way to wake her from the dreamlike state. Meanwhile, Perrin and the captured villagers are formally introduced to Lady Seroth, the Shan commander, who demands their absolute loyalty or face dire consequences. When one of the Sheenaran trackers refuses to kneel, he is executed on the spot, forcing Perrin and the others to submit. At the asylum, Rand continues his attempts to learn about the One Power from Loghain, offering him rare wine in exchange for information. However, after going through great lengths to obtain it, Loghain reveals it was all a trick. There is no possible way Rand can control his power. That night, while experiencing a nightmare, Rand unknowingly unleashes a surge of power, causing a burst of flames that accidentally burns down Selene's inn. Back at the White Tower, Egwene struggles to cope with Nynaeve's apparent death, but Elaine comforts and supports her. Meanwhile, Lindren, defying Moiraine's orders, decides to release Mat from his cell. Seeking guidance and not wanting to be alone, Mat also frees Min, and the two decide to leave together. However, before departing, Min secretly strikes a mysterious deal with Lindren. While Perrin is being transported in the Shan caravan, Ishamael visits him and begins manipulating him, urging him to embrace the strange power growing inside him. However, before Ishamael can fully sway him, Ilias and a pack of wolves ambush the caravan, freeing Perrin. Unfortunately, the rest of his friends remain trapped in Shan captivity. Inside Nynaeve's illusion, she lives an idyllic life with Lon, raising a child and surrounded by old friends. However, the dream suddenly turns into a nightmare as Trollocs attack and slaughter her loved ones. Overwhelmed with grief and rage, Nynaeve instinctively taps into the One Power and, in doing so, catches sight of a portal leading back to the White Tower. Realizing the truth of her situation, she rushes toward it, breaking free from the illusion and falling into Egwene's arms. Despite the overwhelming odds, she has successfully passed the Arch's trial. In an ancient cave system, Ishamael performs a ritual, using his powers to break a dark seal, unleashing yet another Forsaken into the world. Near Carrion, Moiraine stops at her childhood home, seeking shelter with her younger sister, Anver. However, she remains emotionally distant, preoccupied with her search for Rand. While questioning locals about his whereabouts, she meets with Loghain, offering him a quick death in exchange for training Rand in the One Power. At the White Tower, following her promotion to Accepted, Nynaeve struggles with the trauma of the Arch's trial but finds comfort in Egwene, who promises to stand by her side. While speaking with Lindren, Nynaeve learns that the One Power slows aging, meaning that Aes Sedai will outlive all their loved ones. As an aside, Lindren also mentions that Perrin's group has been captured by the Shan-Chan, though she warns Nynaeve not to act recklessly. After being rescued by Ilias, Perrin learns that he is a wolf brother, a rare human with the ability to communicate through visions and form a natural bond with wolves. One wolf in particular, Hopper, takes a special interest in Perrin, forming a deep connection with him. Still struggling to track down Rand, Moiraine finally speaks with Anvere and is shocked to discover that her sister's royal connections have granted her an extensive spy network capable of finding Rand with ease. Meanwhile, Alanna and her warders uncover the poem that Lan stole from Moiraine and realize it is actually a prophecy. The text warns that another forsaken Lanfear, the daughter of the night, has been released into the world. At the White Tower, Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine secretly plan to rescue Perrin and the others, but before they can escape, they are ambushed by Lindren, who knocks them unconscious using her powers. Elsewhere, Min and Mat take shelter at an inn, but Min secretly meets with Ishamael in the attic, revealing that Lindren has been working with him all along. Ishamael orders Min to bring Mat to Carrion, setting his plans into motion. After a peaceful hike along a cliffside and a long rest, Rand and Selene are suddenly ambushed by a Fade. Forced to defend himself, Rand channels the One Power, managing to kill the Fade. Though Selene is surprised by his abilities, she chooses to stay with him, unafraid of his powers. Later that night, as Rand and Selene prepare to become intimate, their moment is violently interrupted when Moiraine bursts into the room and wounds Selene. A furious Rand turns on Moiraine, but she reveals the shocking truth: Selene is actually Lanfear, the Forsaken they accidentally freed. Realizing Moiraine's words must be true, Rand has no choice but to flee the city with her, knowing that Lanfear cannot be killed so easily. In the Shan-Chan-occupied city of Falme, Lady Seroth arrives to meet her superior, High Lord Turek, but instead of being celebrated, she is reprimanded and punished for invading the lakeside village without his approval. In an effort to ease the tension, Ishamael presents Turek with the Horn of Valir, offering it as a gift to secure his favor. Meanwhile, Lady Seroth reaffirms her loyalty to the Shadow, secretly plotting to overthrow Turek and use the Shan-Chan army to support Ishamael's plans. Having recovered from her wounds, Lanfear begins her hunt for Moiraine and Rand. As the two flee through the forest, Moiraine finally confesses the truth: Rand never killed the Dark One at the Eye of the World. Instead, he and Moiraine unknowingly freed Ishamael, a dangerous Forsaken. She also warns him about Lanfear's ability to manipulate the dream world, turning sleep into a deadly trap. Elsewhere, Perrin starts to suspect that Ilias has been misleading him. When they unexpectedly return to the lakeside village, Perrin investigates and discovers that the White Cloaks, led by Dane Bornhald, have taken control of the settlement. Among the captives, Perrin finds an ale woman named Avienda, locked in a cage. Later that night, Perrin sneaks into the White Cloak encampment and frees Avienda, but they are quickly discovered. In the ensuing fight, Perrin and Avienda manage to defeat their attackers, but Perrin chooses to spare Dane Bornhald's life. With the White Cloaks behind them, they escape the village. The next morning, Avienda declares herself duty-bound to Perrin, swearing loyalty to him. With Hopper the Wolf at his side, Perrin sets off toward Falme, determined to rescue his captured friends. At the White Tower, Varen Sedai grows increasingly suspicious, sensing that one of her fellow Aes Sedai has been corrupted by the Shadow. Her fears are confirmed when Lindren betrays Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine, secretly using the ways to transport them to Lady Seroth as prisoners. While attempting to escape, only Nynaeve and Elaine manage to break free, leaving Egwene behind, captured by the Shan-Chan. Determined to save Egwene, Nynaeve and Elaine try to sneak back into the city but are caught. Instead of being imprisoned, they are taken into protective custody by Rima, a yellow Aja Aes Sedai who has been secretly resisting the Shan-Chan occupation. Inside the royal palace of Falme, Ishamael meets with Lanfear in her dreams, discussing their long-term ambitions. However, Ishamael begins to suspect that Lanfear may betray him if she sees an opportunity to gain something for herself. When he awakens, he and Lady Seroth are summoned by Lord Turek. To prove their loyalty, they present Egwene, their latest Aes Sedai prisoner, as an offering. Having escaped Lanfear for the time being, Moiraine and Rand take refuge at her family home in Carrion, where they are surprised to find her nephew, Bart Haynes, preparing for his upcoming wedding. Seeking counsel from her sister, Anver, Moiraine finally decides to stop running and instead take control of the situation. Explaining her plan to Rand, Moiraine notes that Lanfear has a history of falling in love with the Dragon Reborn in every age. Realizing they can use this connection to their advantage, she encourages Rand to fall asleep and face Lanfear in the dream world, hoping to gain control over the Forsaken. Following Moiraine's advice, Rand closes his eyes and drifts into sleep. As soon as he enters the dream world, he finds himself restrained to a massive wheel, with Lanfear already waiting for him. On the outskirts of Falme, Egwene is imprisoned in a Shanchan training facility known as the Kennels, where she is subjected to brutal conditioning. According to Shanchan culture, all channelers are enslaved as domain, bound to a superior known as a soldam. Egwene's captor, a cruel soldam named Rena, oversees her training, ensuring her absolute submission. Trapped by the Adam, a special collar that prevents her from fighting back or escaping, Egwene finds herself powerless. Inside the royal palace, Ingter and Loial secretly plan to steal the Horn of Valyr and escape, but wait for the perfect moment to act. Meanwhile, Nynaeve and Elaine explain to Rima, a Yellow Aja Aes Sedai, that Lindren has betrayed the White Tower and delivered Egwene to the Shanchan. Refusing to abandon their friend, they insist on staying in Falme to save her. In the dream world, Lanfear releases Rand from his restraints and insists that she has been protecting him from Ishamael. She tries to convince him that they should work together toward a common goal, but only if Rand abandons Moiraine. Ultimately, Rand accepts, choosing to leave Moiraine behind. Later, in another dream, Lanfear shows Rand a vision of Egwene in captivity, proving that she is telling the truth and slowly earning his trust. That same night, Mat and Min arrive in Carrion, but when Min falls asleep, Ishamael invades her dreams once again. He continues to tempt her with the promise of removing her cursed visions, ordering her to ensure that Mat leaves the city with Rand. Near the White Tower, Lindren visits her critically ill son, but her moment of vulnerability is shattered when Lanfear arrives and cruelly kills him, completely breaking Lindren's spirit. Elsewhere, Alanna and her warders catch Lon attempting to leave in the middle of the night. They force him to admit that he is seeking Suan Sanche, the Amerlin seat, to inform her that Moiraine has found the Dragon Reborn. Surprisingly, Alanna chooses to help him, successfully delivering the information to Suan. After yet another disappointing meeting with Loghain at the asylum, Rand unexpectedly runs into Mat in the streets of Carrion. The two share a heartfelt reunion, embracing after months apart and catching up on their journeys. When Mat learns about Egwene's capture, he agrees to join Rand on a journey to Falme. However, when he tells Min about his plan, she reveals her vision of Mat killing Rand. Fearing that the prophecy might come true, Mat decides to stay behind, unwilling to risk hurting his friend. Rand, however, doesn't make it far either. Before he can leave the city, he is intercepted by Alanna, Lon, and her warders, preventing his escape. Shortly after, Suan Sanche arrives in Carrion, accompanied by over a dozen Aes Sedai, and demands an audience with Moiraine. Back in Falme, Rima and the novices attempt to steady the Adem collar in hopes of finding a way to break its power. However, Nynaeve's unstable control over the one power ends up alerting the Shanchan soldiers. As the soldiers close in, Rima and her warder, Bassin, fight to protect the others, but Bassin is killed, and Rima is captured. Inside the kennels, Egwene's torment intensifies as Rena forces her to accept her position as a domain. After relentless days of torture, Egwene finally breaks, unable to resist any longer. Left sobbing on the cell floor, she has become exactly what the Shanchan wanted, a broken prisoner with no hope of escape. 20 years in the past, Suan Sanche and her lover, Alan Mandragoran, celebrate the end of the war, discussing their future together. However, their moment of peace is shattered when they meet with Gareth Bryan, their superior. Gareth suddenly experiences a powerful vision of the birth of the Dragon Reborn, realizing that a great prophecy is unfolding. With her dying breath, she warns them that they must find the dragon and keep them safe before she collapses, leaving them devastated. In the present, Suan Sanche meets with Moiraine, demanding that she bring Rand before her. Following Aes Sedai protocol, Suan decides to imprison Rand, shielding him from channeling despite Moiraine's protests. Meanwhile, Lindren visits Moiraine's family home and reveals a shocking truth: Bart Haynes, Moiraine's nephew, is a dark friend. When Lindren orders Bart Haynes to kill Moiraine, Anver overhears the conversation, horrified to discover her son's dark allegiance. Elsewhere, Mad is ambushed by Lanfear, who transports him to Falme, delivering him directly to Ishamael. In a calculated move, Ishamael brews a pot of psychoactive tea, convincing Matt to drink it. Overwhelmed by horrifying hallucinations of murder and death, Mad is forced to confront his deepest fears. As he recovers, Ishamael tells Matt that he has finally seen his true nature, urging him to embrace the darkness within him. Without Rima's protection, Nynaeve and Elaine continue their desperate search for Egwene. Coincidentally, they run into Loyal on the streets of Falme, who informs them that Egwene is being held in the kennels, a Shanchan prison that only Soldam can enter. Using a spare Adam collar, they ambush and restrain a Soldam, gaining the perfect disguise for their rescue mission. Meanwhile, Perrin and his group cross the desert on their way to Falme, where they encounter a group of Ale warriors. When Avienda commits a mistake, she undergoes a ritualistic beating as atonement for her error. After proving herself, she earns the respect of her fellow Ale, and they agree to join Perrin on his journey. Using his knowledge of the dream world, Rand falls asleep and contacts Lanfear, seeking her help to escape Carrion. Seeing an opportunity for chaos, Lanfear launches a brutal solo attack on the city, drawing the attention of Suan and the Aes Sedai. The distraction gives Varen, Alana, and their allies enough time to free Rand from his prison. At the same time, Anver tricks Bart Haynes, locking him in a cell and exposing his identity as a dark friend to the authorities. As Rand flees the city, he uses his channeling abilities to realize a shocking truth: Moiraine was never cut off from the One Power, as she had believed. Instead, she was shielded by Ishamael, preventing her from accessing her magic. Using his strength, Rand breaks the shield, restoring Moiraine's connection to the One Power, allowing her to open a portal for their escape. Unfortunately, Suan intervenes, partially stopping them from leaving. But just as it seems they are trapped, Lanfear arrives and effortlessly subdues the Amerlin seat, leaving Suan bloodied on the ground. Without looking back, Moiraine, Rand, and Lan step through the portal, joining Lanfear as they enter the ways, setting the stage for the final confrontation ahead. 3,000 years in the past, Luz Therin Telamon, the Dragon Reborn, confronts Ishamael over his betrayal and allegiance to the Dark One. Despite their former friendship, Luz Therin refuses to grant Ishamael the release of death, instead choosing to seal him away, ensuring his suffering for millennia. In the present, as multiple forces converge on Falme, a climactic battle is about to erupt. Perrin and his group approach the city, but he orders Hopper to stay behind for safety. Meanwhile, Dane Bornhald and his father, Geoffram, prepare their White Cloak army for an invasion to push out the Shanchan occupiers. Inside the ways, Lanfear suddenly opens a portal, teleporting Moiraine and Lan away, while she and Rand appear directly inside the Shanchan palace. As Moiraine and Lan make their way across an endless shoreline, Lan asks Moiraine to re-establish their bond, expressing his desire to protect her once more. This time, Moiraine agrees. As they continue walking, Falme appears in the distance, and they hurry toward the city. The White Cloaks launch their attack, storming the gates of Falme, while Rhaena continues torturing Egwene, forcing her to use her power against the invaders. At the same time, Nynaeve and Elaine's rescue attempt goes terribly wrong when their captured Soldam is killed by an archer, who then shoots and wounds Elaine. Inside the palace, Ishamael pressures Mat, using Payton Fane to present him with the cursed dagger from Shadar Logoth. Rather than falling into Ishamael's trap, Mat crafts the dagger into a spear, using its power to escape captivity. Meanwhile, Ishamael orders Lady Seroth to prepare her strongest domain and send them away on ships as backup plan for the battle to come. Rand wastes no time, heading straight to the palace courtyard, where he mercilessly kills High Lord Turek and his royal guards, claiming vengeance for their atrocities. As Perrin and his allies enter Falme, they find Loial and Ingter, who have successfully stolen the Horn of Valyr. They agree that rescuing Egwene must be their priority, but before they can act, a squad of Shan-Chan soldiers ambushes them. In the ensuing battle, Ingter is killed. With the White Cloaks' assault intensifying, Egwene and the other domain are sent to a defense tower to aid in the fight. However, catapults destroy the tower, killing nearly everyone inside. Egwene and Rhaena survive, but in a dramatic moment of vengeance, Egwene uses a spare Adam to collar Rhaena, forcing her to free Egwene before choking her to death. Rand arrives at the tower to rescue Egwene, but before he can, Ishamael appears, knocking Egwene unconscious. Using Shan-Chan domain, Ishamael subdues and shields Rand, stripping him of his power. Below the tower, chaos erupts as Perrin and his party fight off the Shan-Chan, while Mat, now wielding his cursed spear, opens the box containing the Horn of Valyr and rushes off to deliver it to Rand. White Cloak Commander Aemon Valder recognizes Perrin and attempts to kill him, but Hopper leaps to Perrin's defense, only to be brutally slain by Geoffram Bornhold. Enraged, Perrin kills Geoffram in retaliation, an act witnessed by Dane, who swears vengeance and retreats. Cornered by soldiers, Mat blows the Horn of Valyr, summoning the legendary heroes of the Horn, who charge into battle, turning the tide of the conflict. At the ruined defense tower, Mat arrives and attempts to kill Ishamael, but accidentally injures Rand instead. Before Ishamael can capitalize on the mistake, Egwene regains consciousness and uses her overwhelming power to drive him back. Through the battle's madness, Perrin, Nynaeve, and Elaine finally reach the tower, where Elaine heals Rand's wound, preventing him from dying. On the shoreline, Moiraine sees Lady Surotha's fleet preparing to escape with their most powerful domain. In a decisive move, she destroys the entire fleet, killing the Shan-Chan domain and freeing Rand from his shielded state. With his powers restored, Rand charges his legendary blade with the One Power and strikes down Ishamael, delivering the death Ishamael once begged for, fulfilling the prophecy. With their victory secured, Moiraine unleashes a massive dragon-shaped inferno, proclaiming the return of the Dragon Reborn for all to see. As Rand, Egwene, Perrin, Mat, Nynaeve, and Elaine look down from their victorious battlefield, the people of Falme celebrate, unaware of the darkness still lurking. Inside the palace, Lanfear is confronted by another forsaken Moghedian. In an ominous revelation, Moghedian reveals that she has freed the rest of the Forsaken, anticipating Lanfear's betrayal. Warning her to stay away from Rand and his companions, she declares that they now belong to the Shadow. Though Ishamael is dead, the war against the Dark One is far from over. Final thoughts on The Wheel of Time Season 2. Season 2 of The Wheel of Time delivers a darker, more intense chapter in the battle between light and shadow, bringing each character to the brink of their destiny. Rand fully embraces his role as the Dragon Reborn, proving his strength in Falme's climactic battle, yet he still struggles with the burden of his power. Egwene endures horrific captivity, only to rise stronger than ever, proving that she is no longer just a novice but a true warrior. Perrin finally accepts his bond with the wolves, while Mat fights against his own nature, unsure whether he is destined for heroism or destruction. Nynaeve and Elaine, though shaken by their failures, step into their power, while Moiraine and Lan mend their broken trust, preparing for the greater war ahead. But the victory in Falme is only an illusion. Ishamael may be dead, but his death has only set darker forces into motion. With Moghedien revealing that the rest of the Forsaken have been unleashed, Rand and his allies now face even greater enemies, ones who will stop at nothing to twist fate in the Shadow's favor. The real battle has only just begun.